These people have screwed the Australian public out of billions and billions in tax revenue, and your biggest problem is that the Minerals Council should be called the Mineral and Sedimentary Rocks Council.
Welcome to Spin Bin, where we expose, debunk and unpack the claims being made by politicians and industry and bring you the simple facts. Today we're going to be bringing you a super fun ad, or unpacking, de-spinning.
Fun for whom, Polly?
A super cute, nice ad by, I was going to say Australia's resources industry lobby group, but there's multiple resources industry lobby groups in Australia, aren't they? Aren't there? Aren't they? So this is an ad by the Minerals Council of Australia, and these are the people who have thrown over a number of years their full weight behind obstructing climate action in Australia, undermining environmental law reform, undermining tax reform, undermining workers' rights in Australia, and they're back with a social awareness campaign about how grateful we should all be for mining companies in Australia and all the nice things they do for us.
Every hospital, every school, and every household has a stake in Australia's minerals industry. That's because Australian Minerals keep over 72% of profits in Australia and paid over $74 billion in taxes and royalties in 1 year alone, helping fund infrastructure and services, improving the lives of all Australians. That's why every Australian has a stake in Australian Minerals.
From the tone of this ad, it's like they really care about Australians. They care about the welfare of Australians. Like I said, they have been responsible for so much climate and environment and democratic obstruction in Australia.
Yeah. And they represent the big mining companies, especially the big coal companies, Rio Tinto, BHP. Rio Tinto, you know those guys who blew up Juukan Gorge a while back? Whoops. You know, this is essentially Rio Tinto, BHP and the coal industry, and them just really caring about Australians and being all warm and fuzzy, and I love it, Polly.
It makes me feel really good, actually. I didn't realise that they cared this much. I knew they cared a lot, but I didn't realise they were just
profit-driven, climate-indifferent, money-sucking rent seekers. But actually,
no, that's harsh. I never thought that.
You didn't think that?
Before they did this ad, this really socially minded ad, they sunk about $24 million into a campaign it was basically a scare campaign against industrial relations reform.
They were infamous in helping or contributing to the downfall of the Rudd government and the end of the mining tax, where famously the Minerals Council of Australia spent about $28 million on an advertising campaign that contributed significantly to the downfall of Kevin Rudd and them saving many, many billions in tax.
I want to talk about who's on the board of the Minerals Council of Australia, because a majority of them are CEOs of coal companies, and that really annoys me because coal is not a mineral. Not only are they, I think there's a poor proportion of foreign ownership there, but coal is not a mineral. Coal is a sedimentary rock. So
these people have screwed the Australian public out of billions and billions in tax revenue, and your biggest problem is that the Minerals Council should be called the Mineral and Sedimentary Rocks Council.
So that's who we're dealing with here. Just wanted to put that up front before we get to the numbers.
So what you're saying, Polly, is we can't necessarily take this warm and fuzzy ad as an accurate representation of the interests of the Minerals Council members.
Maybe not. I mean, maybe I'm doing them a disservice, but I just feel like perhaps the Minerals Council of Australia isn't representing me. Perhaps it's representing the mining industry.
That's because Australian Minerals keep over 72% of profits in Australia.
Australian Minerals keep over 72% of profits in Australia.
So I don't know what that means.
I don't know what that means.
I think what you're meant to feel when you hear that is that mining companies in Australia keep 72% of their profits in Australia, or maybe even give 72% of their profits to Australians.
I think that's what you meant to feel. Yeah, the money's swilling around. So there is actually no source for this figure. And if you go to the MCA website, it says This is based on, is it ABS and ATO data? Rod, you actually wrote the Minerals Council of Australia asking them
I rang them and emailed them asking, can we have some sources and working for this claim? Because it generally doesn't stack up. The widely circulated figures, they haven't been recalculated for a while, but it's widely accepted that the mining industry is about 80% foreign owned. And so you would generally imagine if an industry is 80% foreign owned, then it would return 80% of its profits to its foreign owners.
So wait, every Australian doesn't have a stake in Australian minerals?
Yeah, the vast majority of Australian mining profits go offshore. I would have thought that was a pretty uncontroversial thing to say, but here we are.
Just because you see a figure from someone, even if it says, we did some calculations with the ATO and ABS, if they don't actually explain how they reached that conclusion, then you don't need to take that as gospel or fact.
I think a lobby group claim based with absolutely no source and no working that seems counter to widely accepted figures, that sounds like spin to me.
And then they've gone on to say that the mining industry contributed $63 billion to revenue in Australia, basically, in 1 year alone.
Over $74 billion in taxes and royalties in 1 year alone.
It's quite specific there in taxes and royalties. So royalties are the payment that a mining company makes to a government for the right to extract minerals and sedimentary rocks.
If I can use an analogy, a builder buys bricks to build a house.
That's right.
And then makes a profit off that. A mining company should be basically buying the resources. Is that what
Yeah, absolutely.
what we're saying here? Buying the resources, paying the royalties.
The public owns the minerals. The public owns what's under the ground, and this is where I think their claim that every Australian has a stake in Australian minerals. All Australians own our minerals, and mining companies should pay the Australian public some money for the rights to extract those minerals, and those are called royalties. And so I think it's about 20 billion worth of that 63 billion figure is payments for purchasing our minerals.
So as you should, it's not actually, they're not giving us money.
No.
They're paying rightfully something for something that is ours.
That's right. So the remainder is presumably taxes, which would be largely company tax. And mining companies made spectacular profits in the last few years, as they say here, in 1 year alone. And what happened in that year, Polly?
Was there a war in that year?
Yeah, absolutely. Russia invaded the Ukraine in early 2022, and that sent the prices for coal, which Russia is also a major producer of, and other minerals like iron ore, sent it absolutely through the roof. The coal price went to around triple long-term levels. So mining companies were making money absolutely hand over fist.
And then they paid some tax, which you have to do as a business. But like big picture, okay, even if this was a significant contribution in this 1 year, is the tax paid by mining companies significant compared to the overall revenue? If the mining industry suddenly stopped paying this amount of tax, would Australia fall apart?
No, absolutely not. So this needs to be seen in the context of wider Australian government revenue, both the federal and state governments, because this is payments to federal and state governments. So the federal government budget has revenue of sort of $600 to $700 billion per year, and non-Commonwealth linked revenue to the states would be another couple of $100 billion. So this would represent about 5% of revenue to Australian governments. Yeah. So all the hospitals, the schools, the lovely things that you're seeing in this ad, 95% of them, nothing to do with the mining industry.
Helping fund infrastructure and services, improving the lives of all Australians.
In fact, when it comes to infrastructure, the mining industry is generally on the receiving end of government largesse in terms of infrastructure. Every year, the Australia Institute puts out a study on government subsidies to the mining industry and to the fossil fuel industries, and we talk about the hundreds of millions of dollars that get spent on coal railways, cheap access to ports, port infrastructure, roads that are for resource companies. And it's not just us that says this. This is really clear. Queensland Treasury says the more money it has to spend on mining infrastructure, the less money it can spend on schools and hospitals. WA Treasury is pretty clear that they spent $8 billion subsidising the gas industry to 2010. So in terms of paying for services and infrastructure, the mining industry receives a lot of subsidies, particularly relating to infrastructure.
Yeah, and even though I don't think the Minerals Council of Australia specifically represents the gas industry, the mining industry still benefits significantly from subsidies. So yeah, okay, just to sum it up, we get some revenue from this industry, not very much. There's no pipe going directly to hospitals from a coal company delivering money. And we are also...
You're not there as a school principal thinking, gee, I'd like to build another, I'd like to put up another extension classroom here. Oh, look, coal prices just went up. I can accept a few more enrolments.
Cha-ching. And then to add to that, we also spend money subsidising the mining industry. So that's a little bit misleading too. They're not funding the entirety of Australia's infrastructure or our health or hospitals or schools.
Not even a significant portion. So summing up, mining's not really a big part of the Australian economy. Doesn't employ many people, be less than 2% of employment, doesn't pay a lot of tax and royalties, be around 5% of government revenue. The idea that every Australian has a stake in Australian minerals is overstating things, to say the least.
That's why every Australian has a stake in Australian minerals.
So in terms of making life worse on planet Earth, yeah, the Minerals Council definitely has a stake in making life worse on this planet.
What about improving the lives of Australians if you are a resources executive?
Or billionaire.
Or shareholder.
Or major shareholder.
Major shareholder. That's probably a good caveat.
Yeah, I think all of those people...
If you are a rich resources executive, your life is improved.
By the mining industry.